Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, I am back with Brandy. So welcome to the Glow Up Girl podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this conversation. Why don't you tell the audience out there listening and watching who you are and what you do?
So by heart, I'm an educator. I've spent most of my life in that space. I have an education degree and I started there. And then I spent 20 years teaching in the post-secondary area. So to undergraduate students, etc. And my background is really in adapted physical activity. So how do we adapt physical activity to be sure that every person feels that they can be included, no matter, regardless of their ability or lived experience or background. And that's really where I started. And so I spent a long time building a program there so that coaches and physiotherapists and occupational therapists could find this space where they could be more inclusive in their practice. And that expanded for me. And for the last 5 years, I founded a business in 2017 and left post-secondary and jumped into something that was totally unknown to me. And took a risk for sure. And I've spent the last 5 years really working with educators and community leaders and business to take a look at not just their inclusive practice, but even this new realm in which I spent the last 10 years really teaching people that play is the foundation of where we are most inclusive and understanding and creative. And so sharing that with organizations has been the last 5 years for me.
Awesome. So tell me, why is your focus on play?
Well, it's funny. When I taught for a long time, and people would say to me all the time, when we leave your space and when we're done being students and when we're in your community programming, like, we just feel alive. And I used to take that as a huge, that's amazing. That's my intention. And then at one point in time, people started to say to me, it's because you're at play in work. And I really did realize that was actually the key to what I was doing. That was what was helping people, find courage and their voice and all of those things. And so I took a look at play and have a background in therapeutic play now. But the reason play for me is so important is that we're coming to this space, and we've come to this space where even children who we often attribute play to have stopped really playing, have really stopped this kind of unstructured play. And I realized that was actually the foundation of what was causing some of the social dynamics and physical dynamics for children. And it was also causing it for adults. So for me, one of the key pieces for me is actually new research that says that in our brains, so the neurobiology of who we are is actually biologically driven to play. And we knew that for a long time, but we know that play actually happens in this homeostasis. So that means just like we're driven to be thirsty. So one of those times where you went for a long time without water and you thought, oh my goodness, this is the best water I've ever had in my life. And you drank it up. Play is the same. Our brains and our bodies regulate play the same way. So a lot of us are, play thirsty right now. We have been out of play for a long time. And so I think what we're going to see is this amazing resurgence of play, because all of a sudden that thirst is going to get quenched by being able to be out and connected and in person and finding again what gives us joy.
I love that. So for anyone out there listening, what does it mean? Can you explain what it means to be in play?
Well, the properties of play are, defining play is a little bit like defining love and hope and joy. It's very personal, right? Right? It's enormous. But play has a couple of properties that are key. And one is that it's freely chosen. So I can't make you be in play and you couldn't make me be in play. You can't choose it for me. I choose it myself. The other thing is it has this sense of timelessness to it. So when you're in play, you will be doing something that you kind of lose track of time. You're enjoying it so much that you have to, you don't look at your phone, you don't understand the time, and you want it to last forever. So it really has this timeless sense. And the other thing is that when you're doing it, you're doing it for the process. So if I'm in play when I'm, get that 5 minutes at the end of the day that I read my book and my body feels good and I kind of get lost in something, I get lost in my book. There's a real sense that the process is the purpose. So it's not like I go to bed and I say, oh, I'm going to spend 5 minutes in play right now and I'm going to read my book.
Right.
It just happens when I'm in it. And so that for me, people will know what it is. We know it when we see it in children. We often watch it and we're like, oh, I wish I could bottle that. But we actually have it inside us.
And it's like you said, I think it happens in these moments when you are finding and you've been able to find joy and you forget, like time just passes and you didn't think about checking email, didn't think about looking at your phone. You were just like having a really good time and went, oh. And so, and I think you're right. There needs to be more of that brought back into our lives, especially as adults, because when we grow, so to speak, grow up. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Which I'm like, I don't think I'll ever like be a grown up because I try to always find these moments of just like, laughter and find, I often laugh throughout the day about random things and people are like, what are you laughing about? I'm like, I don't know, I just saw something and I was just like, but it's those moments of just like like wow, because I often refer to, like, when I'm at work, I tell people, I'm like, oh my god, like we can laugh, we're not saving lives here, we're like we're marketing lights, people, like I am not going to perform surgery today so we can have a good time. And I think a lot of times people just think that, especially in the corporate workplace, and that they cannot pull in these moments of play, which I think something, play lends itself to helping you be more creative.
Hugely. Yep. Yeah. Hugely. And more connected. And I think what's happening, or what has happened, is that there's this real divide between people think, well, I can't play at work because that's, seen as not productive, and it's seen as all these, very negative things. And that people really think, it's funny when I go into an organization and they hear that it's, I'm going to evoke play and we're going to talk about play. They often turn themselves off because they really think that play is like, I'm going to come in, tell them to do something for 15 minutes, and then they go back to work. And what I'm telling people and what you see in people is that actually when play and work come together, so when parts of what we do at work actually give us that feeling, that timelessness, like we're confident and courageous, and we feel great about what we're doing, we're connected with someone, maybe in that moment we're in play, but we would never say that at work. We would say, this is where I'm productive and, all these things. But those moments, so my intention is not to say, here's what you can do for 15 minutes a day to be in play. It's like, take those moments in your work, and every time you feel them, be mindful. Like, today, when I was with that client, or when I was with that person, or I was building this or doing this, that's when I felt most myself, authentic and here and present. And take those moments and put them in your pocket and say, wow, if my work could contain just a little bit more of that, wow, like it would be an incredible change to engagement and belonging.
Exactly. When you speak to people and when you say that to them, how's the reception then? Do they see it? Do they begin to see it differently?
Really, because what happens is when you start to talk about it, when you start to discuss it, you actually take down all these walls of like barriers of fear and all these kind of stereotypical ideas of what play is. No different than we have stereotypical ideas about what our work is or who people are. We have that, a very strict, this is when we're in play and this is, when we can't. And so people start to see, and I call it collecting. They start to collect yeah, those are the moments when this happens for me. Or they have a really striking thing that happens, and that is that nothing that they do at work makes them feel that way. And oftentimes, I get both sides. I get people who say, wow, yeah, that is my play at work. That is when I'm in play. And I get people who say, that never happens to me at work. And I would say in that moment where between never and always is, belonging, connection, engagement, that's productivity and performance and people feeling good about what they do, which means they get to go home at the end of the day and also feel good about what they do. When people are in play, they're better with their clients, they're better with each other, they're more open to colleagues. And so, yeah, you see that shift, and it doesn't take very long for people to start to discuss that, that all of a sudden people will say, man, I've worked with that person for 20 years and I didn't even know those things about them. And in that moment, we just created this amazing thing that spreads. It's contagious.
Yeah. How do you address that with the leaders in an organization? Because obviously they are probably going to have, their walls are going to be a little bit higher than just the average team members.
Oh, absolutely. And so one of the foundational pieces is that often leadership would say, well, yeah, I want everyone else to be in play. One of the keys to what I do is to say to leadership, actually, until you understand this for you, and that's no different from diversity and inclusion and equity, until you understand that for you, really hard for you to then say, kind of go do this, go be separate from me. And so you actually have to start at the top in this piece, because if it doesn't come from there, then it will look like, here is your 15 minutes to laugh, and here's the other 7.5 hours of your day, right? And so they have to see the value in it. And I would say that, around the world, leaders are starting to realize that they would maybe say belonging, connection, engagement are really important to their bottom line. And I would say all of those are connected in moments where we can play at work.
I like that. And that's so very true. And I do like the referencing it to something like diversity, the DEI, because I think not a lot of leaders up top get that, because even in my own corporate environment, DEI obviously has become a very important initiative for a lot of corporate companies over the last 2 years. And so, you have people talking about it, you're talking about it, seeing emails about it, then after a while, then you're seeing nothing about it. And, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to have a plan. And it's like, yeah, you could build all the plans in the world, but unless there's a constant conversation that's happening, starting with the leadership up top, then it's just going to be seen as another check the box thing. Like, oh,
100%.
We have to check the box because, because it's on our list. And at my company, so we are a part of a global company. But we are a standalone business inside of that. And so with the global company, we have DEI committee that I sit on. And it's so interesting, to sit in that committee monthly and have those conversations. And more of those people actually work for the global company, and there's 2 of us from my company. And then when you go back, sort of back to our company, and it's like, what are we doing? It's like, we can take the up top initiatives, right? We can take those things, but I think that people are smart enough to see through if you're doing it because it's just a global check the box thing, or are you doing it because you really are invested in it? And I would see play as the same thing, because it's a culture thing. It's a part of culture. And when you're trying to recruit people, whenever we're interviewing people, I always ask the question about culture, what type of culture do they want to be a part of? But then, of course, when they ask me about our culture, and I'm like, it's an evolving culture. It wasn't always evolving. It was pretty stale when I got there. And I was like, what culture is this? But those things have to keep, when we say it's evolving, that means we have to continue to grow and do better. Like, we can't just have a plan that no one actually like takes seriously, and the leadership isn't involved in pushing this as an important initiative.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really is, you know, hugely important is that we kind of stop writing these glossy reports about DEI, and then we actually come to some point in which the action is that people actually feel it. So we can take lots of pictures that look nice and look like we're doing it. And that's one of the things I challenge organizations to really look at in their culture, right? Is that if we're taking pictures and writing documents, then we're not getting people back to that space in which they can be authentic, and that they can be themselves. And every time we do that, like every time we walk into a workplace and we filter what we say and what we do and who we are and where we come from and where we've been, every time we do that, we become less and less, great. We become less and less great for organizations and for our potential.
Exactly.
Right. So one of the things that we know, again, if we go back to neuroscience, is that play, when people are in play and they feel like they're in play, they're actually more open to diverse perspectives. It's the point where they're open to listening to, things that they can learn. And actually, it's an incredible place of learning, especially for adults. I know we always go back to kids, but, when we're talking about that DEI space, we need to get to a place where people aren't always filtering and can be authentic, and play can take them there, with the intention of really taking a look at culture and really taking a look at, what does inclusion really mean? Because I think, it's personal, right? Inclusion, right, comes from inside. And I think it's really important that people see the connection to, that openness, that authenticity, and lots of organizations aren't there.
No. Gosh, no. I know. And you think about it, because what comes freely for some, so like I can only obviously speak to myself, but like, I just feel like, I don't take, like, while we're there to do jobs and we are there to be productive, we are also people, and you should spend time getting to know people. And you should, every meeting, like you could have a meeting where you spend like 5 minutes and people are just like talking, catching up. Because, I mean, obviously in the world of effective meetings, we must go through the agenda and get to the people. But I find that it relaxes more people, and meetings can run more smoothly when people feel like it's okay to come into the space and say, well, how was your weekend? Or, what have you been up to lately? And I think that you could see in cultures, because I would definitely say the culture that I'm in, a lot of the meetings you go into, like, nobody's talking, or if people are talking, as soon as like the senior leader person, whoever's in the meeting, people just stop talking. Okay, well, we don't want to keep talking because so and so's here. I'm like, I mean, they're people too. And we were, I'm like,
we've set a cultural agenda for that, right?
Yeah, it's like it's like we were talking before they got here, and it's not, you can at least let the person finish the sentence, and then we can move on. And it's not until that senior person says something like, "Oh, wait, what are y'all talking about?" Then people will relax. But if that person doesn't say that and they just come in and it's allowed to just go, okay, so and so, you're up, then the meeting has this whole level of tension. Like, the whole time everybody's like this, because they don't know, like, oh God, we can't have fun. We're not in a play. We're definitely not in play mode.
Well, and in those moments, we're not, we kind of take off those layers of what our humanity is, right? Like where we come from and who we are, and proficiency. Like, we can be hugely efficient when we're actually open to hearing other people's, where they are and what is happening for them, we can still be super efficient in what we do in a way that, shows empathy, and it shows, this is where we're at. We're in a world where everything changes so fast. And, in one moment at one meeting, something else is different in another meeting, and not acknowledging that the world is, changing, and that we are, constantly in this kind of, I don't know what's next mode. It's really good to acknowledge that, because in that moment, now we're just a little bit more connected to what we do, and we're more deeply involved in who we work with. And that, in the end, that is your, it relates to your profit, it relates to your bottom line, it relates to all those things. But if leadership has created a culture in which, people aren't allowed to be people, then all of those things that they want, their shareholders to have, can't come together. They can't, right. Those two things can't meet.
Yeah. So let's talk about play and how it can help create balance and help one live a purposeful life.
Sure. Well, it's funny because we've been talking so much about work. But the balance really is, and people will say to me, I don't have that play at work. And I'll say, okay, when in your day, or when was the last time that you felt, that kind of timeless sense of, I was really doing something that gave me joy? And for some people, they have to search a really long time. In fact, I've had people break down and say they can't actually remember the last time they did something they enjoyed that much, or felt that way. And so that balance, like for many people, that balance has been really out of, the scale is tipped way to one side and not the other. And so that balance for me is, find it first in outside of work. Find it first. Like, what are the things that, you could actually draw a picture, you remember it so much, like you can smell it and taste the last time you did something that felt that good. And I think the first thing people have to know is what that feels like, because I want them to hold on to that, and I want them to be really mindful. That's what it feels like, sounds like, looks like for them. And then you're able to transfer it and create some balance on both sides. But until people know where to find that, and like I said, there's people that will say to me, I didn't find it as a kid, and I still don't find it now. And so, you kind of go with that awareness is the first step, right? What is it inside me that I think would make me feel that way, or the last time I did that? And so when we talk about balance, I think we really have to look at, not just the work side, but our balance outside. And when people just start to acknowledge that they have those moments, then they can collect more of them and become more purposeful and mindful. It's like, I really want to feel that way again. Like I know what it feels like, and now I want to be there again. And I don't have to be there 24/7 or every day, but really, if we can get people to be mindful of, 2 minutes or 5 minutes a day in which they felt that, not that they created it, not that they put it in their agenda, because that won't work. So it's like, at 11:46, that's from 46 to 11:50, I'm going to play. So you really have to find it, not schedule it. But if at the end of the day, if you write a gratitude journal, for example, at the end of the day, if you can come to that space where you say, wow, today I was in play here. This is where I felt it. Or today I wasn't at all. There wasn't 1 minute where I was there today, but tomorrow, purposefully and intentionally, I want to notice. I want to find it.
And I think also something you said when you mentioned, just being able to remember it and having that memory of it. So maybe when you're in a space, if you had it at that moment at home, and you are maybe in your work life, and you can just remember it, it can probably help to lighten you in that moment and help you sort of, have that feeling. So
so it's transferable, right? That's the great thing about feeling it, right? Is that it is transferable. It's like in the hard times, you can go back and say, oh, yep, I do know what it feels like, and I have some idea of how to achieve it.
I do have to ask though, for people, when you say you have clients who maybe say, that they can't recall a time that they even like were in play as a child or something, that is
Yep.
transferable to an adult. I mean, and then they don't have it as an adult. What do you say to them? How do you help them to find that?
Well, I one of the things I talk about is kind of walking people into play.
Mm-hmm.
So that no different than I can't schedule it from 11:46 to 11:50.
Right.
I can't navigate people to that space, but I can walk them into
Mm-hmm.
a playful opportunity and
Mm-hmm.
see if it is their play. And so my work is really to come in and offer the opportunity to really discover that, um, and really help people dig to the point where they actually can identify some of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that in that moment, then we can grow. So I do a ton of what I called applied play experiences, where I come in and we work not on play, we work on telling our stories and sharing our lived experience and who we are, and some of those moments. And in that's where people often discover they actually have been in play, but
Mm-hmm.
they just, right, they're
Mm-hmm.
so unaware of it. And so when people start to share, it is that kind of connection of, wow, I know that story, I've been there as well. And when
Mm-hmm.
that happens, people start to realize, wow, there were moments. Yeah, there were
Right.
moments.
Yeah. Because I would have to think that everyone has had a moment, they just, like you
Yeah.
said, they may just have a harder time like remembering it, recalling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So how can anyone out here listening or watching who's saying, I need to work with Brandy, I need to bring play into our workplace?
Yep. Well, it's interesting. My website and all those things are going through a massive change right now. So the best way to really get a hold of me is on social. So I'm on Instagram at Brandi Heather 14. I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn. And there you can get an email and all my contact information, and I'll give it to you today for your show notes. Because really often people just reach out to me and say, I was really inspired by what you said there.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that for my company. Can we work through that? And the process is not a set, canned process. It really is getting to know the organization and coming in and helping them get to what they want and need, what their goals are.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And I do think, it's not, I love it because it's not a one size fits all. It's just,
it's never.
Yeah. You gotta get in there and dig deep first.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And spend some time, right?
Yes. Yes. Fantastic. Well, I love this discussion, because it's so needed and it's so important. I think if we have learned anything over the last few years, is that, you should just cherish the moments that you find joy in.
Absolutely.
And find more of it, like all the time.
Yep.
I'm always like, give me more joy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think people are thirsty, right? They're super thirsty for returning to play.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, now we're going to shift over into a little segment called Three Things with Brandy.
Okay.
Sometimes I sneak a fourth one in, but we'll see. All right.
Okay, there you go.
So first, how do you start the day, Brandy?
It's funny. People often have intentional practices.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that one of my intentional practices is really that when I wake up, I love my covers. I was a fort builder as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I love blankets. And so one of the first things I do in the morning is really get connected with my body and my brain just by surrounding myself with that hug in my blankets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's big for me.
I love it.
For sure.
What is one of your favorite songs in a playlist you have right now?
My favorite one has to be right now. It has to be Pink. And All I Know So Far. I think, right, the ability to take our brave selves forward and be knocked down and get back up.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then how do you end the day?
Well, I do read, right? So at the end of the day, and I don't read like business books or how to or any of those
Mm-hmm.
things. I read really frivolous things. So that's how I end my day. I kind of let go of everything and kind of go somewhere else.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. And then one last thing for the audience. So from our discussion today, what are 3 things you'd like for everyone listening and watching to take away?
Well, I think one of the things is really coming back to this, finding your play. I think it's key. And I think in that we will find recovery, and I think we will find healing, and we will find those pieces. So really getting back to play. The idea that play for children is key, and letting them be in this unstructured space where they're navigating conflict and curiosity and discovery. And we need that for our kids, and we need that for ourselves. We need to get back to being curious and discovering again.
Yes.
And the third thing is it is time to heal, right? We need time to heal, and I think play can be a huge part in this collective and personal kind of healing. And I think we need to come back to that.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you. Well, fantastic. So thank you so much, Brandy, for stopping in and spending some time with us today and talking about all things play. Yes. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.